able to build matters relating to the ETS into every single call he makes in the House. But tonight was a bit easy, wasn't it? Because there was a little bit of that on the inflation figures. I think we need to make it a little bit harder for him, and I propose a bit of order paper bingo, so that when the following bills come up, I hope he's able to do that with the same aplomb. Perhaps the Cultural Property Protection and Armed Conflict Bill, the Gambling Amendment Bill, and the Oaths Modernisation Bill. I look forward to when they come to the top of the order paper and we hear how he's going to handle that. Now, I look very much forward to talking about the many, many good things in this budget, Mr. Speaker, but I think I can't resist just addressing some of the nonsense that's been spoken by our friends on the other side. And I have to say that the response by them to this outstanding budget has been, frankly, anemic, it's been weak, it's been half-hearted, and frankly, it's been quite misleading. I want to start with Mr. Nash and his Rolling Stones tie. Mr. Speaker, he said he can't get no satisfaction. Well, that's not what we've heard, Mr. Speaker. And I want to take the issue of the inflation rate. It's been mentioned, and it's true. That's right, and it does. I think that's been proven. Yes, inflation is higher this year for reasons that are well understood by everybody but the opposition. But what they won't tell you is that this is a one-off adjustment. Next year, it's 2.4%. The year after that, 2.4%. The year after that, 2.4%. What happens to the tax cuts? Mr. Speaker, they stay and they endure for a very, very long time. That's not the mistake. What we do know is that there's absolutely no doubt that that inflation figure would have been much, much higher had this been a Labour budget, materially higher, and Mr Cunliffe said as much in the Herald this morning. I quote, "If Labour were writing today's budget, it would spend more than National to ensure the recovery from recession remained on track," said Finance spokesman David Cunliffe, end quote. So there it is. Labour would spend their way out of recession and continue to tax the heck out of hard-working New Zealanders. Well, it worked for Greece, it worked for Portugal, it worked for Italy and Spain, and the UK are in a similar mire, Mr. Speaker, and Mr Cunliffe would take New Zealand down exactly the same tax and spend tack that those countries got into trouble in the first place. And it wouldn't stop there. I am going to mention the ETS. Labour's ETS would have imposed double the cost and introduced sooner than this government's would, and that would have added to inflation. More consumption leads to higher borrowing, and higher borrowing drives up interest rates, and an unacceptable burden on hard-working New Zealanders. Electricity prices went up 72% under the 9 years of the Labour government, and I've got no doubt that it would do exactly that were they back. And where's Labour's alternative budget? They don't have one. They just don't know what they'd do. They crusaded around the country in a bus that said axe the tax. And they didn't need a bus. They could have saved on gas and put it in a two-door Morris Minor. That's about as much interest they got. They would have had enough room for a suitcase and a six-pack. But the slogan didn't ring true. Would they axe the tax? We don't know. The public don't know. The commentators don't know. And the reason is because even Labour don't know. They can't even make up their minds on whether to axe the tax they said they'd axe. And that confusion was still evident in Mr Cunliffe's first call about loss attributing qualifying companies. He saw them as terrible things, and I think he said, yes, they put it in place, but we saw it used for purposes that it never intended. God forbid that loss attribution companies were used to attribute losses. It's just consistent with the sort of confusion that they have around the tax arbitrage that they created over 9 years, and these arbitrage measures are being put down. But I really want to just focus on the last thing that unfortunately Labour still don't get, and that is that 3/4 of income earners are now going to have a top tax rate of 17.5%, nearly half what they had when the previous government came into office. And for that reason alone, Mr Speaker, this budget is going to be applauded right around the country by all but the 20% of people that still support Labour.
Brilliant. Call the Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Mr Speaker, I am very disappointed in this taxation budget measures bill because it is not ambitious for New Zealand. There is nothing in this budget that is ambitious for New Zealand. The only step change that I could see in this budget and in this bill is a step back not a step up. And I would have thought that, in fact, a step up was what the government was talking about when they talked about a step change. But no, we find it's a step back. But I found in the regulatory impact statement that they were looking to achieve a step up in economic growth by improving incentives to work, save and invest. Well, that isn't a very clear message to the people I've been talking to about the implications of this budget as we've led up today. And this bill is not about a brighter future for the